to another episode of LEGTV. A very important week. It is week 5. I'm your host, the commish, John David Brake, breaking down the matchups that are extremely important this week as teams are jockeying already for playoff position here in the early part of the season. And let's see how things shook out last week. Speaking of shook, no bigger surprise than Nick Shook getting a huge dub over Pokemon. Gotta catch it all. 222 points. That's a single season high. And I scored 170, and that was a big point. Still lost. Nico and Stroud combined for 70 points. It's hard to compete with that, even with Derrick Henry running for 35 points all over the place. The first loss for Pokemon, nickel to nickel, speaking of, gives Joe his first loss, 159 to 142, a huge upset. A lot of injuries played a part in that for Joe. Dak Prescott and Kyron Williams for nice, and DK is still producing for nickel to nickel. Oh, speaking of losing, Dahlgren, oh boy, 0 points for Mark Andrews, 122 to 196. Bears scored 196, 36 points from Jordan Love and Jaden Reed with 29. That stack worked well. Pretty Little Liars goes down to Dak Street Boys 166 to 140. Kenneth Walker with 33 points. A huge breakout game as he comes back from injury. Not a lot of production from the Bengals players. They had okay games. And Abby gets the loss. And what a close loss for his brother Anurag. 140 to 142. Jabel gets the win. Another solid performance by Jaden Daniels. Malik Neighbors, he showed up for Anu, but it wasn't enough. And poor Mickey boy, what's going on? 150 to 111 loss to Dave Plow, even with Kyle Pitts not scoring a single point, and Carson Steele ended up costing you points. And a lot of that has to do with the Arizona Cardinals. For some reason, just can't get it together right now for Mickey boy as he goes down. Now, as I mentioned, we actually have some breaking news before we get into the week previews and break down the rosters and see who's going to win and what players are going to make an impact for week 5. But breaking news, it looks like Davante Adams is wanting out of Las Vegas. There are rumors that he is being shopped. He is unhappy in Las Vegas. And it didn't help that he was spotted with a Green Day album in his locker. It's because what they said about Las Vegas. Anyways, also some surprising news that could have some fantasy value impact is kicker Brian McManus, who's a free agent, was suspended on sexual harassment charges on a flight to London, which were proved to not have been correct and fabricated. So he's now been vindicated and is able to join any team that needs a kicker. And the evidence was insufficient as the flight attendant recalled the event that he tried to grope her, but he missed wide left. McManus. Okay, let's go over to the week 5. That was so bad. Let's go over the week 5 matchups. There are some big, important matchups here. We are in the meat of the season right now with week 5, and no bigger matchup right here than 3-1 Pokemon Gotta Catch It All, coming off that fresh loss to Shook against the number 1 overall team, the last undefeated team, nickel to nickel. This is my game of the week. Possibly not the only game of the week. There are a lot of good ones here. But let's break down the roster. We're going to see which team, who they're starting, and then where the breakout player is going to be to try to put that person over the edge. Keep you guys informed. So let's look at Pokemon's roster here. Again, it is bye weeks here for week 5. So 3 out of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse are gone. There's no Amon-Ra St. Brown, no Saquon Barkley, no Jalen Hurts. So in their place is Baker Mayfield and Chris Godwin, who put up some decent numbers on Thursday night loss in overtime to the Falcons there. Baker Mayfield is outperforming Jalen Hurts, by the way, which is shocking. Now Deontay Johnson gets the start in their wide receiver 2 spot. He was banged up, but should play. That has been a total game changer with Andy, the Red Rifle, playing quarterback there, and Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry looks like he is finally finding his groove in Baltimore. That should be a big impact. Now here's another sub for the running back position. No Saquon Barkley. So it looks like Chase Brown is getting the start against the Baltimore Ravens, and Chase Brown is starting to nip at the heels of Zach Moss. He did have a huge game last week. Will he replicate that 23-point performance? We'll see. Hopefully Brock Bowers at the tight end spot will produce, as he has been on the downtrend. He's going up against the Denver Broncos. And in the flex, George Pickens, the number one receiver in Pittsburgh, going up against Dallas on Sunday night. And really, I think the breakout here, it's going to rely heavily on how much Chase Brown is involved on the offense for the Bengals. Will he have another game like last week, or will he go back to single-digit points? This is the key for Pokemon to stay ahead of nickel to nickel with the early lead on the Thursday night football game. But let's look at Dan's roster here. Starting Dak Prescott again. Now, he's only missing David Montgomery as his real player that he's missing this week, the only one that makes an impact. But again, let's look at Tyreek Hill. As I said over and over again, it is a bad situation in Miami. It is all hands-on-deck panic mode with no Tua, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and pretty much everyone is suffering because of that. So Tyreek Hill has kind of been a non-factor. DK Metcalf, just the opposite. DK has been phenomenal. He's put up 30, 22, and 16 last week. I mean, that was a low point since the first week, was 16 points. Kyron Williams, he's the lead bell cow running back there. He should have a good game. Now, because there's no David Montgomery, we've got Braylon Allen starting. This is a very interesting play. He's not the number one running back in the Jets. So, and Isaiah Likely, not the number one tight end. I don't get that either. I mean, he had that like one good week, so not sure what to think of that. I definitely think Pokemon has the advantage there in their RB2 and tight end spot. The flex, though, T. Higgins. This is going to be the key for Dano to win. Dan needs a big performance from T. Higgins to come out and probably put up maybe some decent points, a little bit like last week against Carolina. I mean, he finally got into the groove. He did get 10 targets, 12 points last week. But T. Higgins, he's got to produce. He's got to get at least 15 or more for Dan to win this one. And no shock at all, I am picking myself to win this week. I was wrong last week, but that was a fluke. I mean, Nick Shook scored 220 points. Come on. So I'm taking me this week. All right, let's go to another important game. Well, sort of, because one team needs a win and one team can't afford to lose again. John Dahlgren's Clock Gobblers against the Purdy Little Liars. Avalash off to a slow start, but Dahlgren is in trouble. Now, I'm looking at Dahlgren's roster here. I actually kind of like how his players look this week. Justin Fields is starting to look like a fantasy football producer here, especially in the last two games, combining for 78 points just in week 4 and week 5. And CeeDee Lamb, I mean, he's solid too. You can always rely on him. I mean, he's only had one bad game, that was against Baltimore. But look for him to produce against that Pittsburgh defense. Here's what I don't like. I don't like Keenan Allen here. This is not a good spot. Keenan Allen is not really producing there in Chicago. Chuba Hubbard, however, he is also a big surprise, as he is trying to keep Jonathan Brooks off from nipping at his heels as he comes back from injury, possibly next week. DeAndre Swift did have a great game finally last week after putting up single digits the whole season. Will that continue? Possibly. It is Carolina after all. Now, at the tight end, Zach Ertz, that's against the Browns. Again, the tight end spot is just so wishy-washy. But here's where he's in real trouble. Ramondre Stevenson in the flex. He's had the case of the fumbies lately, and Antonio Gibson might be the starter. We'll see about that. Let's go over to Avi's roster here. Joe Burrow getting the start against Baltimore Ravens. That's not a surprise. Now, Joe Flacco made Michael Pittman fantasy relevant again. Is Anthony Richardson going to play? We will see. I think that might be the key for this week. Jerry Jeudy in Cleveland. I don't like that start against the Washington Redskins. I do like his running backs, Brian Robinson Jr., although Zach Moss, as I mentioned earlier, in trouble with Chase Brown nipping at his heels. Cole Kmet could also be a factor. Now, he had that one fluke game of 25 points, kind of came back to earth last week. We'll see about that. But Tyler Lockett is clearly a distant third on the Seattle Seahawks wide receiving room. It's DK, and it's Jackson Smith and Jigba. But Tyler Lockett can produce, and he did give you 11 points last week. But again, he's only had 2 double-digit performances, and they've been low. double digits. So looking at the rosters here for Abby, I think the key for him is Michael Pittman. We got to see if Michael Pittman can have Joe Flacco deliver him accurate passes out of the backfield. If it's not, if it's Anthony Richardson, Abby's toast. And I'm going to call an upset here. Even though Abby is projected to lose, Dahlgren's 0-4. I think Dahlgren gets his first win this week. I am picking John Dahlgren over Abby, dropping both teams to 1-4. Ugh, gross. All right, let's go to another important matchup. 2-2 teams, two former champions, Rocky Bitches and Dak Street Boys, taking on each other here. Austin is projected to win, but didn't get a whole lot of help from the Thursday night game as Bijan Robinson. What's going on with this guy? He is not the stud, or at least worthy of a first-round draft pick, and it's been very frustrating, I'm sure, for Austin Stoll. Let's take a look at his roster, his starting lineup. Of course, Lamar Jackson going against the Bengals. DJ Moore going against the Carolina Panthers. He's been very, very solid, very consistent, scoring around that projected like a 10 to 13 point range. Juwan Jennings, this is going to be huge as Debo is coming back. Now, obviously, he didn't have another 51-point game last week, but will he get 6 to 7 targets? That will be interesting against Arizona. That could be a blowout, and they just run it to Jordan Mason. As I mentioned, Bijan Robinson only 10 points, 5 below projected. That didn't help. Kenneth Walker, can he also produce like he did last week now that he's back from the oblique injury? Scored 34 points last week. My goodness. George Kittle, this is also a very important spot. He did have a great game against the Patriots on 4 targets, got a touchdown, which really, really helped, which I think he's going to be moving forward a touchdown-dependent tight end, as there's a lot of mouths to feed in San Francisco. And Tank Dell, I'm not so sure about Tank Dell in the flex. Speaking of mouths to feed, there's a lot of receivers in Texas that command the ball. No one bigger than Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell is third, unfortunately. So my key for Dahlgren, since Bijan Robinson kind of pooped the bed, I'm going to go George Kittle. I mean, the tight end spot has been so spotty. And if he gets the targets that he needs and gets a touchdown, that's going to propel Austin to a win this week. Let's look at Dave Plow's roster. Now, getting the start, Patrick Mahomes, again, when is it going to happen? When's he going to have that breakout game? He has not scored more than 22 points this season, and he's been hovering around 16 to 20 points, which is very un-Patrick Mahomes-like. Scary Terry against the Browns. The last couple weeks he's been okay. I don't know if that's going to continue. I don't think he'll probably put up more than the projected 12 points that he's projected to score. Mike Williams finally getting some attention in New York. What's going on with Garrett Wilson? I mean, the guy's a bum right now. Don't understand that. I do like the James Cook play. Coming off a rough game against Baltimore, he's going up against another pretty staunch run defense against the Houston Texans. That's right, Houston Texans. Going against Houston, but it's at Houston, and Buffalo needs a bounce back. He could be very, very beneficial there. And Javonte Williams, Broncos are hard to figure out. They really are. Javonte Williams will get targets in the backfield, though. Bo Nix is just an awful, awful quarterback. But look who finally showed up for Plow. Kyle Pitts scored 15 points in the Thursday night game on 7 catches for 88 yards. That is a definite plus for Plow because Kyle Pitts had not been doing jack diddly squat. And the free agent pickup of the week, one of them anyways, Wan'Dale Robinson getting the start in the flex. So I like Plow's flex play. Let's see what Patrick Mahomes does. Really, I mean, if he wants to come back and beat Austin, it's got to be Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has to put up those numbers. It's the reason why Plow has only won 2 games, is Patrick Mahomes is not performing like he normally does, and I'm still going to take Austin. I'm taking Austin to win this week. My gut said Plow, but I think I'm going to take Austin this week to win. Let's go over to Mick. Boy, Mick is in trouble. Speaking of other teams that need help, taking on Dr. Anu Roger Goodell in a heartbreaking loss to Jable Soul last week. Anu is projected to take this one. Mick is dealing with some bye issues and also some Arizona Cardinal issues. Hopefully those will get on track, and maybe against the Niners, doubt it. But let's look down Mick's starting roster here to see where the points are going to come from. This is a regular who's who of who is this on Mick's roster besides Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, that's his stack in Arizona, and it's kind of boom or bust there right now, which is shocking to me. I thought that'd be a lot better. Now, Trey McBride is supposed to come back this week, and Mick currently has Hunter Henry. I think he'll probably sub Trey McBride in there, who is clearly a better target or a better tight end than Hunter Henry. But then we go to, I said Garrett Wilson. What's going on with this guy? I mean, he's supposed to be just like killing it with Aaron Rodgers. He's just been kind of okay. Not last week, though. Very, very bad showing. 5 receptions for 41 yards. I mean, that was an ugly game anyways, but he hasn't scored more than 14 points. And this was also a late first round, early second round pick player that you wanted on your roster, and he is not performing up to snuff. Talking about Denver running backs again, Jaleel McLaughlin. I like Javonte Williams better than that. I don't think he's going to score more than 10 points there against the Raiders, who are also in free fall. And his RB2, Justice Hill. He's starting 2 RB2/RB3s. Poor Mickey boy. Now, I do like the Jackson Smith and Jigba start there in the flex. That's a nice play. Now, again, he's kind of up and down just depending on what kind of game DK Metcalf has. I mean, he's double digits, single digits for Jackson Smith and Jigba. But I do like his play in the flex. The key, again, Garrett Wilson, why are you not performing? Garrett Wilson, are you a bum? I don't think so. Mick needs Garrett Wilson to put up like at least 18 to 20 points to get the win here. He is in big, big trouble. It's going to be a steep hill to climb against Anu, who had a huge game from Drake London on Thursday Night Football. 38 points. Drake London finally gave that superstar first round performance against Tampa Bay, scoring 38 points. That really helps, having that type of lead. 154 yards on 12 catches and a touchdown. Trevor Lawrence, though, I think Mick has the advantage there. I don't like Trevor Lawrence against the Colts. Stephon Diggs could be a nice play against Buffalo, but again, he's not the number one receiver there, but he's putting up number one receiver points, except for that one game against the Bears. I mean, 21, 20, and 18 points. That's what you want in a wide receiver, too. So pair that nicely with Drake London. Now, Breece Hall is another interesting play here, as he had a terrible game against Denver, but we're going to forget that because it was just an ugly game, and hopefully he gets back to scoring 20-plus points. Devin Achane, man, also a big sufferer of Tua going down, has not scored in double digits since week 2, that big game against Buffalo. So that's a tough spot for Mr. Anurag. Dalton Schultz, the tight end, going up against Buffalo, and again, another high prospect tight end that is not panning out. Now, Malik Neighbors, though, is he going to play? He said he's facing an uphill battle to play against the Seahawks. That's why Wan'Dale Robinson was one of the hot free agent pickups. He's got a clear concussion protocol and get on the field, but he's kind of trending in the wrong direction for week 5. So that's probably going to be a sub for Anu. And if he does go out, I mean, he's got either Aaron Jones to put in there, which I totally would do that. Maybe Amari Cooper, I don't know, but he'll probably put in Aaron Jones there in the flex, and that'll propel him enough. But yeah, Breece Hall is the key here. I need to see Breece Hall get back to 20 points here for Anu. I don't think this is going to be a tough one for Anu to get back on the winning side, and he'll take down Mick, so I'm taking Dr. Anurag ready to give Mick another loss. Woo! Tough break, buddy. All right, another matchup here. 1-3 Nick Shook coming off a 222-point performance, taking on Working from Mahomes, who had a 196-point performance, and a lot of that had to do with Mr. Mike Evans. Let's take a look at Barris's roster here. Mike Evans had a great game Thursday Night Football, scoring 23 points. He had 2 touchdowns, 62 yards and 5 receptions. Jordan Love getting the start, who started off slow, but man, he came back after throwing 3 picks. 4 touchdown passes, had a huge game, for him, scoring 23, or sorry, not 23 points, scoring 36 points. And he's looking for that combination again with Jalen Reed in the flex. Let's look at his wide receiver Tuesday. Flowers, he's kind of trailed off after the last 2 weeks. I think Nico obviously has the better spot there. I do like Shook's receivers over Barris's, but I like the running backs here with James Conner going up against San Francisco. Alexander Madison, he's boomer bust, and so is Las Vegas. Oh boy, Travis Kelce, where have you gone, Travis Kelce? You did have a nice game, and that was a big reason why Barris won last week, finally getting in double digits. I honestly think James Conner is going to be the key for Barris this week. He is projected to win. The live projection, anyways, is projecting him. No, he's projected to lose. I'm sorry. The live projection is for him to get close to Shook. But I think it's going to be very surprising moving on this season with Nick Shook's team. Let's look at his roster. His roster's pretty good. It just had a slow start. CJ Stroud has been phenomenal. Stacking him with Nico Collins is finally kicking into high gear. 32 points last week. And Justin Jefferson, again, Sam Darnold, there's been no drop-off from Kirk Cousins. Justin Jefferson is still one of the best receivers in the league. He's only scored less than 20 points once, and that was in the first week when he scored 15. He scored 20-plus every single week. Nico Collins, the big breakout game last week, 38 points. I think he's going to also have another 20-point game against the Buffalo Bills. And look at this, Jordan Mason. We don't know when C-Mac's coming back, but clearly Jordan Mason is one of the top running backs in the league. Najee Harris, though, this is an interesting spot. Najee Harris never been really that great of a producer since his rookie year. He has scored double digits the last 2 weeks. He's going up against Dallas on Sunday night. I think he'll probably get around 10 to 12 points, but I don't like the tight end, Cody Parkinson. Christian Kirk, it was shaky early on, but it's coming into full fold now, and he's going up against the Colts, and that's why I think Shook is starting him. So I think the key here is Najee Harris going up against Dallas. He needs to have a big game from him because all the other players are solid other than the tight end. Najee Harris, if he produces and gets over projection in the 14 to 15-point range, I don't think it's going to be close. I'm taking Nick Shook this week over Barris. I know. I can't believe it. This is a crazy, crazy season. Let's go to the final game, my other game of the week. Joe Murdoch taking on Jabel Soul, both 3-1, third and fourth place. This is projected to be pretty close. Joe is projected to win 155 to 144. And let's see why that is. Let's look at the rosters here. Again, it's been the Josh Allen show. He has been pretty phenomenal, minus last week against Baltimore. His lowest point total, only 7 points. But Joe is having some issues with some injuries. We'll address that here as we look at Chris Olave getting the start, of course. Number one receiver in New Orleans. Debo is back, and he is going up against the Arizona Cardinals. What kind of effect is that going to have? Are they going to slowly work him in? Or is this like Juwan Jennings is just going to get sunsetted? What's going to happen there? Josh Jacobs, who's been a pretty welcome surprise there, scoring double digits in 4 out of the last 5 weeks. Alvin Kamara now moving to the the running back 2 position for Joe, no longer in the flex. I mean, this guy's been just prime Alvin Kamara, 24 points last week. I mean, he's one of the top running backs in the entire league. Dalton Kincaid, that's also hit or miss. He's only gone double digits once with Josh Allen. And Houston's got a pretty good defense. And Jonathan Taylor moving down to the flex because we are waiting to hear who is going to get the start. It is very likely, I don't think Jonathan Taylor plays against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's going to be the Trey Sermon show. So who's going to get that start? Because Calvin Ridley's on bye. Maybe he puts in Cortland Sutton, which that's not very fun. But Joe did get Trey Sermon off the waiver wire. So he got the handcuff. He's good. there. Let's look at Jabel's team. Again, we were wrong about Jaden Daniels. He is making an immediate impact in fantasy football, coming off another 30-point performance. You're getting points in the air and you're getting points on the ground with Jaden Daniels. He has been phenomenal. He goes up against Cleveland. Another bright spot has been Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jaguars, 21 points last week. He should eat against the Colts secondary. Is it going to be him or Christian Kirk? That's the question. Jamar Chase, he's starting to get back on track in the last 2 weeks. Granted, he didn't have a 30-point game, but he did score 18 points against Carolina. He's going up against a Buffalo defense that will let you get some points there in the backfield. Travis Etienne, is he going to play, though? He was limited in practice Thursday. If he is, that's going to be a big play for Jabel going up against the Colts' soft run defense, even though they kind of held Pittsburgh. But again, I don't think Pittsburgh's rush defense is that great. Devin Singletary getting the start, coming off a bad game, 4 points last week against Seattle. He's playing. And Jake Ferguson actually looking like he might be a consistent tight end. He's at least now a top 5, scoring 15 and 10 the last 2 weeks. And Brandon Ayuk, this is key. What is Brandon Ayuk going to do now that Deebo Samuel is back? This is my key. Is what is Jabel going to get out of Ayuk? Now, Ayuk used to be the lead dog. He strung the Niners along in the contract disputes, and it shows. They're kind of punishing him a little bit, as it's been the Juwan Jennings show in San Francisco, and now Deebo's back. It could be very possible that Ayuk is kind of trailing to the third option for Brock Purdy. So, if Brandon Ayuk scores 15 points or higher, I think Jabel runs away with this one. But I'm looking at Joe's team. Even with Jonathan Taylor being out, Trey Sermon against Jacksonville is a nice play. I think Alvin Kamara is going to have a huge game for Joe. That's where I see things happening for him. And Trey Sermon, I think, will do okay, but Alvin Kamara has just been fantastic. So despite the injuries, despite the bye weeks, I think Joe is going to take it this week. It sucks not having Rashee Rice for the rest of the year as we kind of wait and see what the final verdict is there, but I still like Joe to take it this week over Jabel. And that was the Week 5 roundup here. Hopefully you all stay tuned, keep informed, keep involved in the league, see what players are doing, what moving and shaking up the standings as we move closer and closer to crunch time for the playoffs and that $600 prize. So thank you again for watching. We will see you next week on LEGTV.